All right. Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake here.
Jake, it's been a minute.
1 minute, yes.
So what have you been up to, Jake?
I've been living life and making it happen.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it feels like it's been forever since we've been in the same space doing something like this. We've done a lot of interviews here lately, Jake. So, Jake, what should they do if they want to see an interview?
Yeah, so go check out the Sabbath Lounge website, or you can go to YouTube or any of the podcast zones. We're all over them, right? So wherever you're listening to us, look for interviews. And then, Sabbath Lounge has all that too.
Yeah, and you can always Google Sabbath Lounge, but we've done a lot of interviews, but this is a series we're going to do about the Pharisees.
That's right. So kind of a different pace from the last few things we've posted. So
yes. So we were kind of curious ourselves, who are the Pharisees? We've heard a lot of things about the Pharisees, and probably so have you. And we just wanted to kind of dive into who are the Pharisees, what did they think a little bit, and just diving into who they are.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when you come into the Torah walk, you get accused of being a Pharisee. So maybe we should know what that is.
Yeah.
Before we go, no.
That's right. And we're going to divide this into like 4 chunks, and so they'll be pretty easy to watch little pieces. And we cite sources in here, so we'll also make this available on the Sabbath Lounge website, and you should be able to click links that are in the PDF that will be embedded.
Right.
So we do like to put sources on there. We pulled sources from other places. Now, if you watch this sometime in the future, sometimes websites and links do get moved around and changed, but we hope that those will still be live for a while. So anyway, I think we'll just dive right into who are the Pharisees.
Right.
So, and we do appreciate that you are here today, and we ask that you would please share this with someone that might find it interesting, and
then subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and hit the notification bell thing that everyone does, and hopefully the algorithms will be in our favor.
Yep. All right, so Jake, who are the Pharisees?
Well, hopefully by the end of this, we'll all have some
Maybe
idea.
We'll know. So the first part of this, we're going to talk about the background of the Pharisees. So
okay.
Part 1 begins now.
It's a good place to begin at part 1.
Got to start somewhere. All right, Jake.
So describe the rules of the Pharisees as laid out in Torah. All right. So we're going to say that Torah has a bunch of verses, possibly, that tell us how the Pharisees should do their thing, right?
Yeah, laying out how to be a Pharisee and what you're supposed to do.
Okay.
So that should be really clear and easy to see in Scripture.
Right. So let's see it.
So there it is. So
if you go to your Torah, you won't find the Pharisees running around in there. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So you're not going to find anything to back up on how to be a Pharisee and qualifications to be a Pharisee. Those things aren't there.
It's almost like it came later than that.
It came later. So that's a good thing to establish, and so not everyone may know that. Not everyone may understand that. And I think that's kind of how we got here, is we were thinking those same things and thought, well, you might think it too. So this, once again, Sabbath Lounge is kind of a reflection of things that we study and we find interesting. So during the course of time, the priesthood had kind of lost its way during the Second Temple, and there was a void in leadership. And something that we talk about in our fellowship a lot is not only was there a void in leadership, but the people, the commoner, if you will, he and she, they didn't know the Torah well enough to call it into check, and they could have called their leaders an account and could have held them accountable, but they didn't know the Torah either, so they couldn't keep them in check.
So outside of the priesthood was rulers of the families, essentially leaders of the families, and then behind that is the people. So yeah, not holding the people to account, and you get the leadership that you deserve, basically.
Yeah.
I think maybe we find ourselves in similar situations today.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's easy to pick on the priesthood and pick on these guys, and
Yeah, put it all on their feet.
but I don't think that's always fair, because in essence, through time, all of these families should have known Torah, and they should have taught it to their children, and they should have been like, wait a minute, that's not right. Especially like when you see David and they carry the ark and they do all of that the wrong way.
Right.
It's like they didn't do anything hardly the right way.
Like,
and,
oh, you touched it and you died.
Yeah,
and we're surprised about it.
You had it on an ox and a cart.
Yeah.
Just this long list of things that they didn't know. And so, yeah, I mean, there is a burden, and there's always been a burden on us to know.
Yeah.
And we can't just go, well, the leadership didn't tell me. It's all their fault.
Yeah, and I think this way systems are built up now, it's a lot of that. It's trust the experts. You see it in secular places also, with trust the science and all that stuff, and the science. But it's also the way churches tend to be set up, is people just go and listen to the pastor, and what he says is what all I need to know. So
yep. Well, and if you click on this link here, this will take you to more information about kind of what happens at the Maccabean revolt, and that's kind of where this Pharisee movement kind of begins, as they kind of rise up during this void in leadership and kind of take charge. So, but yeah, feel free to click on that link and check it out. So, Jake, would you read this scripture, Ezekiel 10:18?
Sure. Then the glory of Yahweh left the temple's entrance and stood over the angels.
And Jake, wouldn't you say most of our audience and most of us understand that the spirit of Yah had left the temple at some point?
Right. Yeah. So this would be the second temple, and then that doesn't really return until Messiah is in the flesh, right?
Yeah, till he's there, and then of course he's there.
Right. So, he's there.
Yeah. So, and then he leaves, and it doesn't appear that he ever came back there.
Right.
So that's all interesting as well.
Well, and we would say that we're the temple, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's this book called The History of the Hebrew Commonwealth by Bailey and Kent, and we put a link to it there, and this is a quote. So Jake, would you read this quote from the book?
Henceforth, the Pharisees played a leading part in Jewish life. In politics, they were conservative, believing that the policy of expansion and of alliance with heathen nations was really disloyalty to Jehovah. In religion, they were progressives, holding that the ancient sacred law must be interpreted and applied to new questions as they arise in everyday life, and that the new interpretations and applications are of equal authority with the law itself.
All right, so why did we emphasize equal?
Because there's the thought would be that there isn't necessarily anything wrong with developing ways of understanding what Scripture is saying, but when you start making that understanding in those, guardrails, if you will, equal to the law, you elevate that to the status of the law and start judging people by it. Now you're into territories where you're violating commands of do not add to or take away from the law.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, and I think something interesting too, I think if you ask the man on the street out there, or the woman on the street, are the Pharisees conservative or liberal? Well, first off, that's not a fair question. We understand that. So don't be like, you can't ask that.
Right.
We get that didn't exist during the Pharisee time.
Yeah, the way that, the American kind of divide on that works.
So, but in our understanding of conservative and liberalism today, most people would think they were conservative.
Yeah.
And I think that, that then depends on who are you comparing them to. But as far as Jewish sects, that's hard to say without saying other things there. But I used to
Family show, man.
I definitely got giggles when I was in junior high with that when that came up in a class one time. So I definitely got some giggles.
Good.
And thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Myself. Probably still do. So
Not
anyway.
sure why.
But so with that, amongst themselves, they would be considered progressive, and they'd be considered the people, the party of the people. And we'll go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think interesting is, I think if I think back to my church upbringing, I would say that, and the way that I see Christianity talk about the Pharisees now, I would think that they would assume them to be quite conservative to a fault. Like they're going back to the old ways, and that's done away with, or it's everything new now because Messiah is here. So they were stuck in their old traditions and the old ways, and that would be the conservative aspect of it.
Yeah.
But in this, he's saying that their religion was actually progressive.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go on.
The conservative part is, sorry, not to beat a dead horse, but so the conservative part, they were conservative in politics. They did want to stick to the traditions they were used to. But in the religion aspect, they were progressive in that they were elevating these new laws to the authority of Torah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he goes on to state that the Pharisees are the party of the people, just like we said, in politics, conservative, and religion, progressive.
Right.
So
go ahead.
Once again, from the history of the Hebrew Commonwealth.
Right. And another interesting Commonwealth is Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Yes.
For those who don't know.
Very common wealth.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say they were the true representatives of Judaism, and their principles are still the foundation of the Orthodox Jewish faith. So, Jake, anything interesting about that statement in itself?
Yeah, I think a lot of times again, from the church perspective, I would consider Judaism, and I've heard this mentioned before by others too, would be like Judaism was the original faith, and then Messiah comes and it morphs into Christianity, which is the new faith, and Judaism is now past.
Yes.
Or should be, that's kind of the church perspective of it. But I think our perspective would be that Judaism was especially the way the Pharisees were running it, was a false religion of the day also.
Yeah, it usurped Yah's authority.
Yeah.
When they put themselves in positions, which it goes back to that first slide, there's no office of a Pharisee. You can't find this in Scripture.
It was competing religion, essentially.
Yeah. And they seem to be people who enjoyed the power and the prestige.
Yeah.
But they weren't the only ones. And we'll look at that. So there's this other book by Brad Young, Meet the Rabbis. And what did it say, Jake?
It says those two groups were the Pharisees, who soon evolved into the rabbis and the early Christian community.
So let's back up a second. When he says two groups, we're talking about the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And something that we noticed about the Sadducees is they were the rich class. They were the ruling class. They were the people with lots of money, and they were very much about the status quo. They didn't want to change things, where the Pharisees were more of the people, the party of the people.
Yeah. So the Sadducees would be like what, like landowners and that kind of thing?
Yeah. Okay. They were the wealthy 1%ers, and then the Pharisees were the commoners. I don't know what didn't some politician have some name for the commoners? I can't remember.
Bourgeoisie.
Yeah, maybe.
and the proletariat.
So I was thinking like
Yeah, it was your favorite politician, right? We would call him those things.
That's right.
If you know what we're talking about, put it in the comments.
Yeah. And then another person who wrote of the Pharisees is Josephus. What did Josephus say here, Jake? And this comes from Antiquities of the Jews, and that's a very common book. You can find that. But if you've never read that, that's an interesting book to kind of read through as well.
Right. So Pharisees have delivered to the people a great many observances by succession from their fathers, which are not written in the laws of Moses. And for that reason, it is that the Sadducees reject them and say that we are to esteem those observances to be obligatory, which are in the written word, but are not to observe what are derived from the tradition of our forefathers. And concerning these things, it is that great disputes and differences have arisen among them. While the Sadducees are able to persuade none but the rich, and have not the populace obsequious to them, but the Pharisees have the multitude on their side. But about these two sects, and that of the Essenes, I have treated accurately in the second book of Jewish Affairs.
Okay, so he emphasized which are not written in the laws of Moses.
Yeah, so it seems like the Sadducees were interested in adhering to the laws of Moses more so than the Pharisees, but they just didn't have the same audience. They could not persuade people. Now, they had their faults also, but there is this difference between them.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's fair to say that the Pharisees were the party of the people, and they were the progressives, and the Sadducees are more conservative. And it doesn't. I don't know that I read this anywhere, but I think it could probably be implied, and possibly. I don't know if the Sadducees are older too. That would be interesting. If anybody knows that, I would be curious about that. But I didn't find anything about that.
But yeah, as you're saying though, it's when we're using the terms conservative and progressive. So conservative in the fact that they want to stick with the old ways, the ways of antiquity, the old paths, the ancient paths.
It's the way my father did it, and his father too. When it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me.
Yeah, and they didn't like that the Pharisees were trying to add things to it. That would be the progressive nature of the Pharisees then.
Yeah. Okay, very good. All right, and then Amos.
I hate, this is chapter 5, 21 to 24. I despise your feast days, and I will not smell in your solemn assemblies. Though you offer me burnt offerings and your meat offerings, I will not accept them. Neither will I regard the peace offerings of your fat beasts. Take thou away from me the noise of thy songs, for I will not hear the melody of thy viols. But let judgment run down as waters and righteousness as a mighty stream. So how do you think this applies to the Pharisees?
Well, Pharisees didn't exist at Amos 5:21, did they?
I don't think so.
So this is before the Pharisees, but this shows you the state of the rabbinic, or I guess this is before rabbinic, but the Levitical priesthood,
right,
was not in good shape, if this is what he says.
Right. He's hating their feast days.
And so this is where that void in leadership is very obvious and never really recovers. So this is, in the second temple period, and things are not good. Things are not looking good.
So these are essentially, so people will look at this and say, see, he doesn't really care about the feast days. No, he doesn't care about their feast days, just like he did not accept Cain's offering.
Yeah.
That's the deal. The heart's wrong in their offering, and they're just doing their check boxes to, I've done the feast day that you wanted me to do.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end of part 1 here, and I think that it's fair to say we just kind of wanted to get started on it and to set up that the Pharisees are different than the Sadducees. What else would you say?
And then also they come after kind of the falling away of the priesthood, there's essentially a corruption of the priesthood. And then yeah, we'll be getting into a lot more later, but this is kind of our primer, if you will.
Yep. And then the Pharisees are the party of the people, the commoner, the common guy, the middle class, and the Sadducees are the upper ruling class, the 1%ers.
Yeah.
And they both viewed their words. I don't know if it would be fair to say their words ruled over Torah, but in essence, their oral Torah and their traditions were equal to Torah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what built the rabbinic tradition that follows.
Yeah, and they wanted to have that authoritative system.
Yeah.
Where you had to come to them for the answers and that kind of thing. So.
Yep. So if you are watching this as a YouTube playlist, the next one, it should go in order, would be number 2 in the series. But if you're watching it live, you'll have to wait a week or so, and we'll have a new one published. So, all right, Jake, anything else?
Yeah, I think that about covers it.
All right. Well, this is Matt
and Jake.
Jake signing off.
Signing out.
I said your name.
That is my name.